Hi, it's Dwyer. GamblersAdvisory.com, dwyervip.com. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. I've placed in my favorites folder here a really good press conference for the Gervonta Davis-Liam Walsh fight, where Floyd Mayweather is there and he gets heckled. And the heckler does a great job. As you watch the video, I want you to actually listen to the heckler who they're trying to minimize. Right? The heckler is yelling at Floyd and is basically saying to Floyd, why didn't you fight more outside of the United States? Now, Mayweather obviously had one of boxing's best careers, right? 49-0. Hard to argue with perfection. But I do feel that young fighters miss a lot, legacy-wise, when they don't travel. In other words, you look at a lot of the elite fighters, and you'll notice that they have traveled to fight in different locations, right? Roberto Duran, Ray Leonard, the brawl in Montreal, right? I know Canada's not that far from the United States, but both guys did travel, right? Bernard Hopkins fights Segundo Mercado, I believe in Ecuador or someplace like that, right? Marvelous Marvin Hagler fights Alan Minter in the UK. Obviously, Ali traveled all over the globe, right? He fights in Europe, he fights in the Philippines, he fights in Africa, right? David Haye fought Vladimir Klitschko in Germany. Obviously, Vladimir Klitschko has traveled and has fought in places like Madison Square Garden, Wembley, as well as Germany, right? It does hurt Floyd a little bit, legacy-wise, not to have traveled. I think we all know what that implies. It implies that you were in front of hometown judges, right, in a comfortable environment, and you never had to leave your comfort zone. Fight before judges who might not be as friendly, before crowds that weren't on your side. I hope everyone gives that video a look. Now let's talk about the odds. Today is May the 18th, 2017. Understand, odds change before fights. But let's talk about the odds for the Kell Brook Errol Spence fight. Now Spence is going off at a -200 favorite. And this is that fight where I believe Spence wins the fight. I like Spence, the favorite, right? Given the lines right now, as they are, you have a very high over-under. Both of these guys have power, and understand there's going to be a battle going on here in terms of moving around the ring. I don't think either guy is going to want to be on their back foot for a sustained period of time. So I like the under 10.5 rounds. It's a high over-under. 10.5 gives you to the midway point of the 11th round. I like the under 10.5 rounds. Believe it or not, you're getting that at better than even money. So the bet today I like is Errol Spence to win the fight, right? Hedged with the under 10.5 rounds. What that means is you're covered if Kell Brook gets a stoppage inside of the first 10.5 rounds. You win both sides of the play. If Errol Spence, as I suspect, gets the stoppage before the midway point of the 11th round. But understand the risk involved. You lose it all if the fight goes the distance and Kell Brook wins. Or if Kell Brook gets a KO after the midway point of the 11th round. Now, I've already discussed this fight in a previous video. I think Kell Brook, and I understand he's been down in the low 150s for some time, but I think this fight is too soon for Kell Brook, right? He just suffered his first professional loss, right? To me, it was a blowout. To me, that's the kind of loss where you wake up in the middle of the night and you are in a sweat with visions of Golovkin throwing haymakers at you, right? With visions of your eye hurting, with visions of being semi-conscious in the ring. Let's talk about that stoppage. His corner throws in the towel. I'm telling you that if the corner had waited 10 seconds before throwing in the towel, Kell Brook could well have ended that fight unconscious. So he was beaten up at 160. He's in his 30s, right? Early 30s, but still in his 30s. He's on the wrong side of 30. And now you're telling me that he's going to lose weight, go back down to 147 to fight a guy who is big himself for 147, who is going to come hunting for his body. Look at Errol Spence highlights. Errol Spence is a ribcage hunter. You've heard the term head hunter? Errol Spence is a ribcage hunter. Spence is a guy who comes after you, gets you up on the ropes, is a mid-range hooker. But unlike Danny Garcia, who's kind of standing stationary, Errol Spence, you'll notice, is side to side. In other words, he's over here when he starts, then he jumps on this side. He doesn't want you knowing where he is. There's a long sequence to his game. As you look at the highlights, you're going to notice he's not a pot shot artist, right? This isn't, a guy outside, throws a left hook, comes back. No, Errol Spence is completely committed to his hooks. So he comes in and he's throwing hooks and he's leaning his body from side to side, right? He doesn't double up that much on one hand. It's always like a right, left, or a left, right. And of course, Spence is really confusing because he's a southpaw, right? Spence also likes to smother you, so he's a mid to short range hooker. He's going to be trying to get Kell Brook in the pocket. That's his game. He's going to be hunting Kell Brook. What he's not going to be is upright from outside trying to win this fight behind a jab. He's not going to be stationary. He's going to be mobile, right? This is the worst kind of opponent for Kell Brook to fight after heavy weight loss, right? This is the opponent who follows you around the ring. This is not the opponent who you can hit, and then if you have superior foot speed, like Kell Brook usually does in his fights, you can then back away, get a breather, relax a little bit, engage, back away, relax, breathe, exhale. No. This is not that opponent. This is the opponent where the round begins. The guy's tracking you, right? It's like you're looking around. You're backing up. You're looking where the ropes are because you don't want to get caught up against the ropes. You're trying to circle him in the middle of the ring, but then you just feel his presence invading your space. Sooner or later, you end up against the ropes like Chris Algieri. Now let's talk about the blueprint on how to beat Spence. I believe it's on film, involving a different fighter. In fact, involving a different mid-range hooker. In fact, the fight involves the guy who Spence wants to fight next. What I want people to do is to look hard at the very first round. You don't have to wait long. It's the first round. By the way, this is how, in my opinion, Kell Brook with hand speed needs to start the fight. It's the first round of Keith Thurman against mid-range hooker Danny Garcia. Now let's face it, these hookers, let's say these are the hands they're using, right? And they want to go hook, 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 hook. With Danny Garcia, he'll throw a wrinkle into it. He'll look away so you can't read his eyes, right? It's like an NFL quarterback who's looking this way and throwing that way. You can't read his eyes. Right? Danny Garcia will look this way, and then he'll come in with a hook over here. Right? Danny will come back, he'll look this way, then he'll throw a hook. You can't tell from where you are whether that hook, when it's right here, is going up top or is going down low. Right? Mid-range hookers, for balance reasons, because they are fully committed to their punches. They have their entire body into it. They go 1, 2, 1, 2. Right? This is different. This is different than, let's say, a guy operating off a jab from distance who can double or triple the jab and then who's trying to set up a straight right hand, or who is throwing a jab and then coming back with the same hand with a left hook and stuff like that, right? Floyd Mayweather, right? Vladimir Klitschko. This is different than guys who double and triple up, right? Mid-range hookers tend to be predictable. Now let's talk about Errol Spence. While Danny Garcia is kind of, off at the side a little bit. He's never totally in front of you. He's a little bit off at the side. And then it's look away and right? With Errol Spence, Spence makes a decision, the angle is wider. So Spence is over here, right? And Spence comes in and he comes in low. And he's throwing shots like this, right? He can change the angle and hit you in the head. But he starts out way over here. Then you'll notice he moves way over here, right? He has a wider radius than Danny Garcia. What Keith Thurman did with Danny Garcia and what Kell Brook is going to have to do, in my opinion, to have a chance of winning this fight against Errol Spence, is Keith Thurman comes out and he picks a side. Right? Danny Garcia's two-handed. If you're right in front of a mid-range hooker, you're dealing with left and right hands. So Keith Thurman comes way off, way over at the side, smothers a hand, right? Then leaps in and is throwing power shots. That first round is pitched. There's no, hi, how you doing? Let me get to know you. Let's look at each other for 3 minutes. No, throw that out the window. Right? Keith Thurman wants to break Danny Garcia's rhythm. He doesn't want Garcia figuring out where to stand around the pocket to be able to use both of his hands. So he comes in at a weird angle. A mid-range hooker has to adjust. A mid-range hooker has to turn. If you come in at 230 over here, right? A mid-range hooker has to adjust because they need to get going. They need to get their balance going. They need both hands. They need to be able to swivel at the hips. Keith Thurman comes in at the side and he's throwing straight bombs. Right? Straight bombs right at Danny Garcia. He's coming in at angles with power punches. He has no intention, none whatsoever, of outboxing Danny Garcia. What he's trying to do is to turn up room temperature, and he's trying to be not mid-range, but right up on Danny Garcia. Right? Keith Thurman is the one on his front foot in that first round. He actually hurts Garcia. He's throwing looping shots at times, right? Mixes it up. Straight shots, looping shots. The point is, he's the one dictating the action. He's the one forcing the hooker to reorient themselves, to make the adjustment toward them. Now, you know what they say in boxing? The way to beat a southpaw is with a straight right hand. Kell Brook has a good one. He can't be bashful. I believe what he has to do is just throw the idea of winning a decision out the window, one man's opinion. He needs to decide, you know what, I'm going to make this fight sloppy. Right? If I see Errol Spence moving over here, trying to get to 230 on me, I need to move with him. If this turns into a wrestling match, so be it. But Bernard Hopkins style, I need to get off a power shot and then race inside. Right? Just, smother him. Not allow a mid-range hooker space to throw the hooks. The fight, in my opinion, needs to become a series of Kell Brook just circling, right? Circling Errol Spence, and then diving in, literally diving in with power shots. Kell Brook doesn't have the longest arms in the world, right? I don't believe Kell Brook can stay outside and flick a jab and hope to win the fight on his back foot. When Keith Thurman starts to be on his back foot in that fight against Danny Garcia, that's when Garcia starts to make a bit of a comeback. I believe what Kell Brook needs to do is to literally plan on landing one big shot. I'm talking about huge shot per round. He needs to be moving around, then ambushing Errol Spence. Right? I don't believe he can stand there and trade for prolonged periods with Errol Spence, because Spence is going to be on the move himself, trying to cut off the ring, trying to get inside so he can work Kell Brook's body. So Kell Brook needs to go head hunting. He needs to do it early. He needs to try to throw power shots, then run in and smother Errol Spence. Right? He needs to throw looping shots around Errol Spence's, hooks, smothering one arm of Errol Spence. Right? If he's able to pull off this move, he needs to be able to run in and clinch Errol Spence by grabbing one arm. Because Errol Spence, in my opinion, needs both of his hands to be effective for balance purposes. So, I encourage everyone to look at Keith Thurman's masterpiece against Danny Garcia, especially the early rounds, especially the first round. I know Danny Garcia claims he wasn't badly hurt. I believe he was badly hurt in that first round. Keith Thurman lands a bomb. And Keith Thurman literally galvanizes the crowd, stuns Danny Garcia by not allowing Danny Garcia to set up shop where he could do some mid-range hooking. Right? Thurman is always coming in at weird angles. Always. Right? He then, is throwing power shots. Leading with power shots. Other times he's jabbing a little bit, making sure he's too far outside for mid-range hooker Danny Garcia. I think Errol Spence wants this fight to be fought at mid-range and short range. He wants Kell Brook in front of him. He doesn't want Kell Brook throwing a lot of bullets at him or neutralizing one of his hands. Right? Kell Brook, if he wants to win this fight, is going to have to come in thinking about just diving in with straight right hands. Right? A mid-range hooker has a hole right in the middle. I believe Errol Spence does. Right? Kell Brook has to find a way to exploit that hole to get Errol Spence on his back foot. If he does that, then he has a chance. Here's what I think's going to happen. I think Kell Brook's going to be energized. I think Kell Brook is going to come out. I think he's going to wilt. I think it's going to be kind of like the Golovkin fight, where sooner or later in the middle of the fight, Errol Spence is going to be in there landing punches at will on Kell Brook's mid-cage. Right? For Kell Brook to prevent that, he's really going to have to throw straight right hands and uppercuts on the inside. Right? He's also going to have to grab one of Spence's hands, or at least keep Spence turning, because the mid-range hooker needs to stop. Right? Look at Spence when he throws punches. He has his entire body behind it. You need to use that against him. To get that torque, he really needs to know where you are. Kell Brook really cannot afford to stop moving in this fight. Anyway, that's how I see it. Let me hear from you. I'm expecting Kell Brook to lose this fight. The bet I'm recommending is the favorite. Errol Spence, minus 200, hedged with the under 10.5 rounds at plus 120. That's how I see it. I'll concede that if Kell Brook, especially at the beginning of rounds, when they start the round apart from each other, right? If Kell Brook can come out, be the aggressor, and jump in with straight right hands and force Spence to adjust to him, Kell Brook could turn this thing around. Anyway, that's how I see it. Let me hear from you. I hope you leave your comments in the comment section to this video. Thanks for stopping by.